saying Grim in English. That is the creator of with Ender of the YouTube channel StarJump. They are making amazing videos from the Star Citizen assets. It's very nice. Do we have Grim with us on the video? Yeah,
I think so.
Yes,
Doo-doo.
we heard a doo-doo. Doo-doo. This is
On
not
l'a plus,
good.
on l'a plus, on l'a
Voilà.
plus.
Donc voilà. Et le palier voilà, n'a pas bougé depuis.
C'est
voilà.
vrai.
Donc voilà. iGot prend la peine de vous expliquer ce qui se passe à 3500, à 4000 et surtout une belle porte Grimex. Et voilà, les paliers ne bougent pas. Elle va finir par croire que vous n'avez rien compris et que dans le chat on n'a pas des gens qui comprennent. Hein, voilà. Et d'ailleurs, merci déjà à tous ceux qui ont déjà participé. Merci à eux.
De fou. Merci beaucoup à tous ceux qui ont déjà donné, même si c'est des... Parce qu'on va passer des 5 euros, on va passer des 50, des 250.
Chaque
en fait,
somme est important.
Peu importe le montant que vous donnez, il y a des avantages supplémentaires, mais peu importe ce que vous donnez, c'est... Merci beaucoup, quoi.
Voilà. On pense vraiment qu'avec voilà, toute la communauté que nous sommes là, on va pouvoir construire cet événement. Here is Grim. Do you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Yes, my friend Grim from Ohio, Columbus, right?
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio,
Columbus.
formerly New York. I lived in New York City for about 20 years, but now I'm in Ohio for the last 5 years.
Thank you for being here. I hope you're well.
I really appreciate it.
Graham, you was supposed to be at Beacon 1, and finally it was not possible for private reason to be here, but you had the kindness to make behind the scene video that we show to the audience in the Beacon, and we hope for the next time you will be there for the Beacon 2024.
With there for the next one, for sure, 100%.
I am with.
My wife's going to come with me. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, un peu plus fort. Right. I am with iGot. iGot will ask the question in English and try to make the double exercise to translate then in French for the audience.
Cool.
And like this, we would like to have the information for the international community and also for the French-speaking community.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so I find my beak again, so I will take note. It's not that I'm not listening to you, so it's just like I'm taking note to translate later. So first of all, thank you for coming. I hope you're doing fine and that it's not too early or too late where you are.
No, it's a perfect time. It motivated me to wake up and get moving, so it was a good thing. I've actually got my Drake Kraken coffee cup here with full of coffee, so I'm doing good right now.
We are missing a little bit of coffee right here.
Yeah.
One coffee for Graham, please.
For iGot is good as well. So thanks a lot for coming and joining us. I wanted to know, like, if you could present you like in one or two sentences, if there is something we don't know about you that you would share with us, for example.
Sure. Well, I'm kind of known, I think, for all the visuals, StarJump Fleet Viewer and the cinematics and that kind of stuff. But the funny thing is, I'm actually came from the musician kind of world. I actually graduated college with a major in sound engineering and was big into audio. So that's kind of something that a lot of people don't realize about me, is was originally my focus. It was only that, once I got out into the professional world, that I started switching to visuals and then got into visual effects and then went to the film industry and stuff like that. So yeah, that's something a lot of people don't know about me. So in a lot of my work, especially my cinematics, I haven't been able to put as much effort into the audio side of things as I normally would want to, but moving forward, I'm trying to change all that. I've been working with composers now and doing a lot more sound engineering. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing people don't know.
Would you say that like you're a bit sad, or that you hadn't the chance to work more on the music than the design aspects?
What I say, I'm looking forward to that chance.
Yeah.
Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do, because I'm a big proponent. I feel like audio is 50% of what you're watching, in terms of the experience.
Yeah, sure.
And like the cinematics, like the Aegis cinematic that's playing behind me and stuff, it used for the most part, stock audio, sourced audio that wasn't really customed to the, customly created to the visuals. So by creating something specific for the visuals, it's going to have a much bigger impact. And, obviously these cinematics take a lot of work. So I want to have the highest amount of impact I can when I release them. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one I do, which is RSI focused. This was an Aegis one. I did a Drake one. The next one's RSI focused. I'm hoping that one has a much more powerful feeling when you watch it, because it's going to be all tailored to the visuals, the music, the sound effects, all that kind of stuff.
Donc, ce que Grim nous explique, c'est que de base, lui, il vient plus du monde de la musique que du monde vidéo, du design. Mais de fil en aiguille, il a plus été confronté à tout ce qui est mise en scène, si je puis dire, et qu'il est plus connu pour tout ce qui est visuel. Mais il est assez impatient, il a vraiment très envie de pouvoir retourner un petit peu plus dans ce côté audio, parce qu'au final, l'audio fait quand même au moins 50% de ce qu'on regarde. C'est quelque chose qui est très important. Quand on regarde un truc, il n'y a pas de musique derrière, en fait, ça n'a pas du tout le même impact que quand vous avez une musique qui est adaptée. Donc là, c'est vraiment quelque chose, looking forward to, qu'il espère pouvoir développer un peu plus et voir plus en détail. Okay, so the first question that we had for you was, what is StarJump, and how did you start doing 3D animation and content creation then, if you are from the music world?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with the 3D animation just because that came first. So yeah. I started off doing 3D and stuff for the film and television industry. I worked on some big movies, and then worked on, for some big television networks here in the US. And, so that sort of became my career. I started getting into 3D animation, 2D animation, broadcast design, all kinds of stuff, visual effects. And kind of a lot of the stuff that's in Gavin Rothery, who was a guest on the show obviously yesterday, kind of the same world he was operating in. And then, when I found Star Citizen in 2012, I backed the program, or backed the project, but I hadn't started playing, and I really wasn't involved in it other than just thinking it was kind of cool and backing the project.
Oh.
So I think in 2018, myself and my good friend Ender, who's also a part of StarJump, we got together and started playing the game, and I quickly said, you know what, I think I can get into this. And when I saw that RSI had the holo models on their website, I said, I can do something with this. So I started, pulling them down, manipulating them, and then the first thing that StarJump did as a group was the Drake cinematic. I mean, it was mostly me, but so I did all the work for the cinematic. But Ender, who's part of StarJump, he handles a lot of our community, managing our Discord, doing things like building hype for stuff, because he's out there in social media a lot. And then we started bringing on other people. We brought in Starlet, who's one of our members, and we brought in VMXEO, who's another one of our members, who's done work with JRDF and has developed his own software along with some friends of his called StarFab. And we started doing things like the StarJump Fleet Viewer. So, I guess the question, what is StarJump? It is it's a content creation group, but our goal is to create content that is unique. So we're not just typically doing reviews on what was announced during ISC that week or anything like that. And it's not because we don't like that. I think there's people that do that already very well. So we try to focus on projects that are just really unique. So Fleet Viewer, ship deep dive shows, cinematics, things that there aren't a ton of people doing. So that's primarily what StarJump's goal is. So
just I'm not so sure that I understood the end. You're working on more unique project because you don't want to do a kind of react to Star Citizen. Is that right? And
Yeah, because I think there's people that already do that really well.
Yeah.
Like Joran on Yacht Club, they do a great weekly show where every week they cover the Star Citizen news, they cover all that stuff, and we like being a part of those communities just as much. I'm always watching Yacht Club. So since there's already so many communities out there and so many people that cover that really well, we felt like our skills could be put to different use and try to give back to the community in a slightly different way. So I think the StarJump Fleet Viewer is probably the best example of that. That was something that was wholly for the community. It was completely for them. So I think you can expect going forward that new StarJump projects, because I have one that I'm working on now. That's a new project. Newer StarJump projects are going to be in the same vein. They're going to be kind of unique and stuff that you probably haven't seen yet from the community. So.
Yeah. Donc ici, c'est un petit peu donc ce que Grim explique, c'est qu'il a backé le projet, mais en se disant ouais, ça va être cool, c'est un monde dans l'espace, ça va être sympa, mais sans vraiment plus y prêter attention au début. Et en 2018, il a commencé à y jouer avec un ami qui est aussi à la base de StarJump.
Ender.
Ender.
Yeah.
Et ils se sont dit en y jouant qu'ils pouvaient faire quelque chose avec tout ça. Donc ils ont commencé à regarder un petit peu ce qui était possible au niveau de Star Citizen, à manipuler les vaisseaux. Et au fur et à mesure, ils ont commencé à produire des choses, et l'équipe s'est un petit peu agrandie de fil en aiguille, et c'est là que StarJump prend vraiment son essence. C'est un groupe de créateurs de contenu qui va proposer non pas de la réaction à ce qu'est Star Citizen aujourd'hui. Il y a déjà d'autres groupes qui le font. On l'a vu avec Jeroen et le Yacht Club juste avant. Et donc, il propose des trucs un peu plus uniques en termes de visuel, en termes de partage avec la communauté, etc. So, to do all of those 3D stuff and to create so many contents, what kind of software and pipelines do you use?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a semi-complicated one. So a lot of people, I think, I guess it's good that it's a complicated one. So I start in, by pulling the holo models that you've probably seen on the RSI website, when you go there and you look at a ship, and you can view its holo model, and it has no textures on it. It's just like a kind of a holographic ship thing.
Yeah.
Start there. I pull those down, and then once I pulled that down, I start texturing it. Actually, let me step back one more time. There's two different pipelines. So one is for flight-ready ships, so ships that are already in the game, and then the other one is for concept ships that are not in the game. So for flight-ready ships, I use StarFab, right? Which is the software that was created by my good friend VMXEO and Ventivar and James the Stormtrooper. Really powerful software. We use it for StarJump Fleet Viewer that can pull the ship file and reassemble it in Blender. So those go through a Blender pipeline. Mm-hmm. For concept ships like the Crucible, the Endeavor, the Polaris, the Kraken, all those, the ones that are not in game, that's a lot harder for me to do. So I have to pull the holo model. I then have to texture it, I have to light it, and I have to fix it. Usually they require a lot of fixing. And then once they're fixed, I can start bringing them into Cinema 4D, which is a 3D application, much like Blender or Maya or something like that. But it's called Cinema 4D. And then once I'm in Cinema 4D, I start animating, right? So I'm moving ships around, I'm moving asteroids around, animating the camera. And then once I've done all that, I'll do wireframe renders to kind of see how it's looking. I don't render anything yet, which, rendering, for those that don't know, is the act of kind of making, calculating the image so that it looks pretty, looks beautiful. That doesn't happen until later because it's pretty expensive to do that. So I really work in like wireframes for a long time. But I would say 95% of the work happens in Cinema 4D, which is some really powerful 3D software that's also really easy to use. So if you are looking to get into some 3D, I do recommend Cinema 4D. However, Blender, which we also use, is free. You can actually download it on the web and play with it yourself. There's tons of tutorials, so it's very accessible to people out there. So.
You're speaking about like with the concept ship that you doing you take the holo and then you do the texture and then the fixing. What does consist what is the fixing exactly like?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. Some holo models, I would say any holo model from 2019 forward, or like in 2019 and backwards. So, you know, a lot of the earlier stuff, the holo models were very simple and didn't contain a lot of detail. A good example that would be like the Polaris. It just doesn't have the detailing in the 3D model to be able to create something, for example, that can sit on StarJump Fleet Viewer and still have the same fidelity as the other ships. And that was the problem, right? So we have all ships on StarJump Fleet Viewer. We have unreleased and released ships, and you want the unreleased ships, the concept ships, you want them to be the same visual fidelity as the flight-ready ships. So because of that, it requires me to bring up the detail on some of those holo models. So what that requires is, let's say if I open something like an unreleased Aegis ship, so I'll open like the Nautilus, right, which you see flying behind me right now. I open the Nautilus. Some of the parts and pieces of the Nautilus might be too simplified for Fleet Viewer or for a cinematic. Let's say it's a docking collar. So what I'll do is I'll chop that out, and I'll go grab a docking collar from a flight-ready Aegis ship, like a Reclaimer or something like that, that is at high detail. And I'll bring that over and I'll slide it into place, into the Nautilus. And essentially, as much of the Nautilus that I can rebuild to sort of CIG's style, then I do. Some ships get bigger changes than others because some are really bad. The Polaris and the Endeavor were probably two of the worst. The Polaris had almost no detail at all, so I actually had to rebuild major parts of it. And the Endeavor, while CIG had the base ship as a holo model on their website, they had none of the modules, and it's got 9 different modules. So I had to work with another 3D artist to build out all the modules for the Endeavor, which I think you see behind me now. So all those modules we had to build out from scratch using nothing but just imagery we found on like Jump Point magazine and stuff. We just had to build them to look correct. The funny thing is I have since been contacted by some artists at CIG who are like, wow, Graham, you really, I know you didn't have anything to work with, because CIG obviously doesn't provide me with anything, but they're like, man, you got really, really close on that. How did you get so close? And I was just like, I just look at the concept imagery and do my best.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So, l'idée c'est que il va vraiment partir. Le holo modèle, je suppose que ça va vraiment être un modèle 3D qui est présent qui est affiché, quoi. C'est ça. Et donc, si on prend juste l'idée de base, c'est prendre ce modèle holo et d'y rajouter de la texture. Sauf que c'est un petit peu plus compliqué que ça. Il y a 2 parties. Il y a les vaisseaux qui sont déjà sortis, qui sont déjà prêts qui sont déjà sortis dans le jeu. Et donc là, il utilise StarFab, qui est un programme qui a été créé par VMXEO, in French, so VMXEO, right? Et donc là, c'est un peu plus facile de les animer, de rajouter tout le concept 3D autour. Et il y a les vaisseaux qui ne sont que des concepts pour l'instant, où là il y a un petit peu plus de travail à faire. Donc il y a le holo de base, où il va commencer par rajouter de la texture et puis faire tout ce qui est le côté fixing. Et donc le côté fixing, c'est tous les vaisseaux qui datent d'avant 2019 était beaucoup plus simple et sans détail de base. Et donc, l'idée, c'est quand même d'être le plus fidèle possible au monde que CIG a envie de partager avec nous. Et donc, c'est vraiment reprendre un peu la reconstruction de ces vaisseaux. Par exemple, pour le Polaris, il y avait quasiment aucun détail. Donc, c'était repartir sur le holo et dire, bah, OK, voilà, le vaisseau va servir à ça, donc on va rajouter telle et telle chose. Et par exemple, pour le Endeavour,
Ouais.
Endeavour, bah, il n'y avait aucun module, donc ils ont vraiment dû reconstruire les différents modules et mettre ça en place.
Et il y a une réaction de CIG
Ouais.
à ce sujet.
Et donc il y a eu une réaction de CIG qui est bah, en fait, comment est-ce que ça a été possible enfin, comment t'es arrivé à un résultat qui est aussi proche au final de ce qu'on voulait faire. Donc c'est assez dingue de voir que partant d'un juste un concept, on arrive au final à créer quelque chose qui est proche de ce que CIG voulait faire. Et donc pour tous ces... Le talent. You're so talented, that's what he said. Et pour ces concepts, du coup, il y a 95% du travail qui est réalisé sur cinéma 4D, qui permet vraiment de rajouter de l'animation. Alors il y a un truc qui est assez important dans le travail des concepts, c'est que la majorité du travail est fait autour de wireframe. Donc ça va vraiment être comment schématiser ça? C'est vraiment un plan, un plan très gros de à quoi ça va ressembler. Je veux 2 ailes là, ben, je vais mettre deux ailes, deux triangles, plutôt que de vraiment détailler l'aile et d'avoir vraiment toute la chose exactement comme on la voudrait. Parce que d'avoir les choses en détail peut coûter beaucoup plus cher. Et ben, c'est un budget qu'il faut prendre en compte. Mais par contre, il vous conseille, si jamais vous avez envie de vous mettre à l'animation, Cinéma 4D est très très bon. C'est facile d'accès et sinon il y a Blender qui est gratuit, qui est assez facile d'accès parce qu'il y a énormément de vidéos sur le software, sur le programme. Donc vous pouvez vraiment l'utiliser si jamais ça vous intéresse de vous mettre à la 4D et d'essayer de créer des vaisseaux aussi proches de la vision de CIG que ce que Grimm peut proposer. Okay.
That was a lot of technical stuff to translate, so
Yeah.
I'm extremely impressed.
That's why I'm taking notes, so I'm sure I don't miss anything.
It's all good. Just tell me if you need me to go slower through some of this software stuff. I know some of it's a bit obtuse and long.
Actually, it was quite good. You were so clear about it, so it was perfect.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
So the next question is like, what was the most challenging aspect of creating the StarJump fleet viewer?
The most challenging aspect of Fleet Viewer was definitely the amount of ships CIG has.
Yeah.
When I started the project, I think I was a little bit naive, thinking that I could get through all the ships myself in a normal amount of time. So it took about a year and a half. Well, about a year to create it. And I want to go ahead, since I'm on here, and shout out two people, obviously VMXEO, who we mentioned, and Starlet. Without them, I couldn't have done Fleet Viewer at all. They were equal parts of it. It's not really my project. It's all three of ours project and StarJump's project as a whole. But the concept ships were the hardest part, for sure. Ships like the Crucible, the Endeavor, the Polaris. There's probably a couple more in there. Ships like the Santakii, ships that there just was not a lot of data for, but yet we had to create something that, really high fidelity. That was extremely complicated. There was a lot of people out there, in the Star Citizen world that I was able to consult on some of the 3D aspects of those ships. Just asking knowledge, hey, how does the modules on the Endeavor fit together exactly? Because I need to know that to be able to build them in 3D. So just everyone coming together and really helping me out, getting me through those concept ships was really great. But that was the hardest challenge for sure. And thankfully, VMXEO was there to take care of almost all the flight ready ships. I would say about 40%, or I would say about 80% of the flight ready ships VMXEO handled for me, which was a huge help. And then obviously Starlet, we were just able to hand over the raw data, and within about a week and a half, I would say about a week, she was able to take all that data, and it was a lot. It was over 1,500 images, and she was able to get that all built into what people know as Fleet Viewer. So yeah, it was a really cool experience. But I would say the concept ships were the hardest part for me.
And you mentioned the fact that like you were a bit naive considering the amount of ships.
Yeah.
How many times did you think back then that it was gonna take you?
So when I first started the project, which was in April of 2021, when I first started building, actually, I think that's when I first showed Starlet a PDF I created with the idea of how Fleet Viewer could work. And she said, yeah, that we can do that. We can do that. That shouldn't be a problem. So then I started working on the ships. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I know there was a moment where I was like, I should be able to get through these in 4 or 5 months. I don't know what I was thinking. CIG has a lot of ships. And you know, this is something I'll say. I know a lot of people sometimes will say, "Oh, CIG takes too long on getting XYZ ship released." If you look at how many ships they have actually got flight ready, it's a lot of ships. Their ship teams have really pumped out spaceships. It's kind of incredible. So yeah, very naive. So I was able to get VMXEO on board to help. But even with him helping me, it took us about 10 months to get through all the ships, probably about 10 months. That did include some ships that were not player ships, though, like the Retribution, the Bengal, the Pegasus, some ships that are, you know, not in the verse right now. So yeah, includes some stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll try to summarize it. Donc, un des côtés les plus compliqués, ça a été quand même tout ce qui était les concept chips, parce que justement, il fallait pouvoir faire tout ce chemin dont on a parlé juste avant. Mais à côté de ça, il a eu la chance de travailler avec I can't say it in French. VMXEO. VM, okay. So, VM a quand même aidé à faire 80% des vaisseaux qui étaient déjà sortis par CIG. Et il a eu la chance d'avoir Starlet qui a traité les datas pures et dures et qui a pris donc une bonne semaine. C'est ça, hein? C'est une semaine? Was it like she treated all of the raw data in 1 week?
We handed it over to her, and I would say in about a week or 2 weeks, she had the working prototype of Fleet Viewer built and working really nicely. And then it was just some back and forth over the course of maybe 5 days, where me and her polished up some of the interactive stuff, and it was pretty much ready. She worked really quickly.
Donc pour créer la Fleet Viewer en une semaine, en partant des images, etc., ça a été faisable pour elle de la reconstituer, ce qui est assez rapide au vu du nombre de vaisseaux qu'on a à disposition. Et une des choses qui est assez comique qu'il nous racontait, c'est qu'il avait l'impression qu'en 4-5 mois, il serait capable de reproduire cette flotte de vaisseaux. Et au final, ça leur a pris un peu plus de 10 mois pour tout refaire. Mais il y a certains vaisseaux qui sont des vaisseaux non jouables, qui font également partie de cette flotte. Tu as l'air de vouloir rajouter quelque chose, mon cher Fran.
Oui, parce qu'il a dit plenty, donc avec beaucoup de vaisseaux. Mais combien est-ce qu'il a compté à un moment donné? Est-ce qu'il a un chiffre?
Did you count how many ships that you made?
Yes, it was, and VM is in chat. He could maybe help me, but I want to say there was almost like 150 to 160 ships, but the important thing to remember with that is that we're not just rendering one view. We have 4 different views for every ship in the game. So it was, oh, no, I'm sorry. It was about 250 ships. So it was 250 ships times 4 different views. So it was about 1,000 pictures, about 1,000 images. And all those had to be rendered at 4K. So,
And that's all
a lot of
ships
rendering.
and all variants, right? For the Aurora is 5.
Yes, all variants. You know, we would do things like the 600i Executive, but we also did a lot of kind of Easter egg ships. So, for example, there was a girl in our community, Lisa, who passed away while Fleet Viewer was being made. She was part of the StarJump community, and we did a ship honoring her that's got her name on it and stuff. And I would say about 2 days before we released Fleet Viewer to everyone, Starlet hit me up and said, we need a version of the Kraken that's got neon lights all over it and all kinds of stuff. So I did that really quick. So yeah, if you count all the Easter eggs, all the props, because we've got props in there like asteroids and space stations. We put Port Olisar in there. If you calculate all that up, it's a massive amount of data. I would say it's probably about 1,500 renders total.
1,500, c'est 50 000, hein, on est d'accord?
Yep. Yeah, a lot.
That's a lot.
And more to come, you know, during Invictus, I'm sure we're going to have to add some ships, so.
Yeah, but still a lot of work to go then.
Yeah. And that was another part of the project that was important is before we started, you know, I talked to Starlet, especially Starlet, and on this one, MVM, but I was like, you know, look, if we do this, you know, they're going to keep putting ships out for some time. So is everyone good, you know, being part of this Fleet Viewer project for the long haul, you know, until, you know, for years while CIG continuously adds ships and everyone was game. And I think we built the system, Starlet built the system to where we could pretty easily, pretty painlessly add new ships. So yeah, we're committed to it.
Ok, so, donc, ouais.
French mode.
Donc, pour la création de ces modèles 3D, il y en a plus ou moins 250 qui ont été faits pour l'instant, mais c'est pas juste 250, c'est 4 fois 250 parce que en fait, ouais, donc c'est en fait 4 prises de vue de chaque vaisseau pour pouvoir justement le créer. Donc si on rajoute encore tout ce qui est astéroïdes, les différents assets peut-être de stations, etc., c'est si j'ai bien compris, plus de 50 000 photos traitées. Donc c'est énormément de données qui ont été...
50K picture, right? 50K.
Was it 50K? Like
50K pictures, you say?
So the pictures themselves were 4K minimum. Some of them had to be rendered at 6K though, like the Bengal and stuff like that. So because they were so big for the resolution to be able to hold up, we had to render them even larger. So yeah, about 4K to 6K is what the renders had to be. So pretty large. Those are large files to render, you know, and so that was a big pipeline that was created to push all that stuff out.
Donc c'est des fichiers qui sont quand même vachement consistants et Starlet a commencé à mettre en place une espèce de routine qui permet cette création de manière un petit peu plus simple, organisée et de rendre les choses assez painless, facile, sans douleur. Yeah, that's quite hard to jump from one language to another, so I'm trying.
Doing better than I could do. So,
so I still have one question, if you agree.
Sure.
How do you approach creating 3D content for unreleased concept ships that have very little in the way of reference material? Is it just like is it just out of your mind or the community's mind, or is it just like, okay, you know what it's gonna be like, and or is it
So I don't know what it's going to be like typically. So I try to approach it from one of two directions. The first one is there enough data there from the hollow model or from reference material from CIG that it can even be done, because I'm pretty big on not wanting to do something in 3D that's not pretty accurate to what CIG has already created. And the reason is I never want to create something that makes a player feel like, oh, CIG created this ship or sells this ship, I'm going to buy it. And then they buy it or spend money on it based off something I created. So I really want to stay accurate to what CIG has done. I really try not to get too creative and change things. So first I see if it can be done, if there's enough data there for me to work with. Now that we've created Fleet Viewer, though, I have all the ships at the very least. So we've kind of passed that hurdle. But the other thing is I try to show, I like to show concept ships, especially for the cinematics and stuff, because the whole goal behind the cinematics was to let people who do not have some of these ships yet, some of these ships that probably will be a while before they come into the game, I wanted to give them a way to kind of live that fantasy, enjoy that ship a little bit, without owning it yet, you know. So I think that's what the cinematics are meant to do. They, you know, they'll show ships like the Kraken and the Endeavor and even smaller ships like the Santaki Eye and, you know, stuff like that, and try to show them in a way of how you might use it in the game in the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And by doing that, I hope that people can get a little bit of enjoyment and being able to, you know, enjoy the ships they own that are not in the game yet. So that's kind of one of the goals. So.
Donc en fait ici l'idée dans la création, c'est la première chose, s'assurer qu'il y a assez de données qui sont déjà disponibles, parce qu'il n'a pas envie de prendre un concept ship où il n'y a pas de données qui sont disponibles, et donc de créer vraiment quelque chose de totalement inédit qui au final ne va pas du tout ressembler à ce que CIG avait envie de sortir, et qu'au final les gens qui se disent ah mais en fait ce vaisseau X je l'ai vu, j'ai trop envie de l'acheter, et en fait c'est le X de StarJump mais c'est pas le X de CIG, et donc on en arrive à dire ah mais non en fait c'est pas du tout ce que j'avais envie d'acheter, et donc on veut éviter que les gens soient déçus, donc s'assurer qu'il y a assez de données pour créer. Donc on part quand même de quelque chose qui est assez fixé. Une des choses qui est quand même assez importante aussi pour eux, c'est de créer tous les concept ships où il y a justement toutes ces données, parce que on sait que ça va pas arriver dans le jeu avant un certain temps, qu'il faut encore du temps pour qu'il soit totalement fini, et donc permettre quand même d'une manière ou d'une autre aux personnes qui l'auraient acheté ou qui auraient envie de l'acheter d'en profiter d'une manière.
Yeah, I appreciate being invited. I felt honored amongst the great guest panel, so thank you so much.
So maybe you have like one last word you want to say to people.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'd probably just shout out the other members of StarJump real quick before I go. Obviously, there's StarJump Ender, my good friend, longtime partner in content creation. He's running some great charity stuff on his Twitch channel for St. Jude's for kids with cancer and their families. So big shout out to him. He just crossed the $5,000 mark. So we're really proud of him for everything he does for us. And he's kind of our hype man and community manager and stuff. So really appreciate StarJump Ender. Obviously, Starlet and VMXEO are both in chat, both core members of the group that we couldn't do what we do without them. So obviously my big thanks to them. And then, yeah, we really appreciate it. Stay tuned for more cool StarJump stuff coming this year. I promise we have some stuff in the works.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice day,
Cool.
evening, day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Bye.